Back when I was toiling away at the Sub 5 burger slop factory, there was so many times when I witnessed people just hulking out in unbridled fits of rage, workers and customers. I don't know if it's the environment there that just makes people's blood boil, or if it's just like the place is so miserable and greasy and everything that it just works like a magnet, just pulling in all the dregs of society. All the sub fives, the drug addicted single mothers, the barely able to walk, morbidly obese slop cells. I mean, I guess I do kind of understand how being in that environment can just fill a person with rage, especially if you work there, because obviously you're going to be eating that slop for lunch while you're there, because they did give us a 50% discount. When I first started, they would let us eat for free, but then they made it so only managers could eat for free. But still, 50% off was a pretty good deal at the time. This was before fast food prices went completely through the roof. So it was still at least, 50% off was pretty good. But, you're already wage cucking your life away back there in the extremely hot kitchen. You're burning your hands on hot fries, you're burning yourself on the hot grease, and then you occasionally might accidentally cut yourself when you're slicing tomatoes or something. And then customers would be rude to you all the time, or they would just treat you like you're beneath them. Then you get a belly full of that ultra greasy burger slop and some slop onion rings. And it's probably not even real beef. It could easily be some kind of mixture of like 30% beef, 70% soy dust, or something like that. But even if it is real, who knows how long that shit was frozen before it gets to you? So you're already miserable, and then you eat that slop, and you're supposed to go right back to work afterwards on your feet for 10, 11, 12 hours straight. You got customers coming in, they're just as miserable as you are. Everybody's blood pressure is through the freaking roof. Yeah, it's just a powder keg. Obviously, some shit's gonna go down in that sort of environment. Now, of course, we had some rude customers come in sometimes. Most people, I'd say, weren't really rude necessarily, but they were just kind of dismissive, just barking off their orders without even making eye contact, or ordering super fast, like they're working at an auction or something, not giving me enough time to actually put in each item. Which, by the way, it was not usually my fault when I had to ask people to repeat themselves. Our computers would lag all the time. So if someone was ordering really fast without giving any pauses between their sentences, they might just get too far ahead of me in the order. I am actually kind of smart, I think. I have 2 STEM degrees by now, for what that's worth. But I've never been one of those guys that just memorizes like 97 digits of pi. So if somebody was like 3 or 4 items ahead of me in their order, and they're asking for all these modifications on every single item, and my register is still lagging out on the first item, I can only remember so much. But that seemed to be something that a lot of people would get really pissed off about. I remember this one older black trucker guy. He would come in semi regularly, and every time he would order, he would be like shouting his order at me. And then after he finished, he would go like, "Now repeat it back to me." And so I'd repeat his order back to him, which is something I would do a lot of the time anyways, just to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. So he didn't even have to say that, but he would. And he would shout it at me like he's giving a command to his personal slave or something. And then I would repeat the order. And then he would always say something like, "Good, I don't like having to repeat myself." And he would always ask he would ask if everyone's washed their hands. And I remember one time he saw one of the cooks looking at his phone in the back, and he pointed at him and he was like, "What's he doing looking at his phone? He better wash his hands." But the thing is, the guy was on break. He was not involved in this dude's order whatsoever. he was on break. So he was, he was looking at his phone while he's on break. He can do that. But I think with customers like that, it's just, I imagine they're just so powerless in their own job or maybe in their personal life. They're just trying to exert their power over anyone else they can find just so they can feel like less of a loser themselves. So, a fast food worker, that's a pretty easy scenario you can put yourself in where, as the customer, you're just automatically in the position of power. So, I don't know. Some people are just assholes, I'm sure. But that's my psychoanalysis on rude customers. Oh, yeah, and I also remember the black trucker guy. One time he asked my extremely fat, ugly female manager for her number, and she rejected him. And he was like, whatever, you're too fat, anyways. So after that, I actually kind of liked him. That was pretty based. No, I'm just playing. It was actually unnecessary, even if I did not like that manager. But yeah. And there was this other customer, a homeless guy. He was actually living in the woods behind the gas station across the street because we would see him walk out from the woods over there and then we'd see him walk back there after we gave him his food. And he would come in pretty often, usually would get like a small hamburger or just a small fry or something like that. Well, one day he wanted a salad, which is a pretty stupid order for a homeless guy, if you ask me. The salad easily had the very worst calories to cost ratio on the entire menu, but that's what he wanted. I rung him up, put a salad in a bag, and I gave it to him, and he left. Okay, so then like 5 to 10 minutes later, he comes back in, and he's just super pissed off. Apparently, he was mad that I didn't give him any salad dressing. So I told him, it's just a side salad that we sell here. It's actually really not even much of a salad at all. It was literally just 2 leaves of lettuce, 2 slices of tomato, and I think 2 rings of onion. And we didn't even have any dressing. That's how much it was not even actually a salad. We literally did not even carry any kind of dressing. We did have some ranch dipping sauce for the chicken tenders, and we had, I think, honey mustard and barbecue sauce, I think. But I just told the guy, we actually don't have any dressing, but I can give you some dipping sauce. We have ranch. And by the way, he never asked for any dressing at the time when he ordered, but I think he thought I was lying to him when I said we don't have any dressing. We did have the ranch sauce in one of those little dipping cups, which I did offer him, which is something I was not supposed to do, by the way. The salad isn't supposed to come with any kind of sauce, and we're supposed to charge like 25 cents for an extra sauce. But I just offered it to him for free because, I mean, it is kind of stupid that we have a salad that doesn't come with any dressing. That is very stupid. So I understand why the guy was upset, but he was talking to me like I'm freaking retarded or something, or like I did something wrong, but it's just like, this is how it is at the place where I work. The salad doesn't come with a dressing. Maybe I should have told him that, but it's like, I can't remember to tell every person the right thing every time. And, the other thing, I was just the cashier working for minimum wage. I don't think I was the appropriate party to raise any complaints like that with. But yeah, the guy was pissed, but he didn't really make a huge scene or anything. It wasn't really a big deal at that point. He ended up taking a ranch cup and he left, and that was that. Well, that was that until he came back like 5 minutes later, and this time he was furious. Like, as soon as he walked through the door, he was shouting at me. So I guess what happened was I had forgotten to put a fork in his bag, which, yes, that is my fault. I accept responsibility for that. And I did apologize, even though he was being way too mad about it. He was literally like shouting, cussing me out. He was literally yelling at me, calling me a fucking idiot and things like that. So that was not cool. But I also knew this is a crazy homeless guy. And it was my fault that I forgot to give him a fork. So I just said sorry and I gave him a fork. But then after he got the fork, he just continued to stand there yelling at me for like a full minute or two. He asked me if I want to be a rocket scientist someday or something. I don't know. He was just going off. It didn't even make sense, some of the things he said. But the worst part about it was, as he was standing there yelling at me, there was a few people that had walked in after him that were waiting in line to order. And I remember the next people in line were this guy and a girl around my age. The girl was pretty hot, if I remember correctly. That's neither here nor there. But after the homeless dude got done hulking out and yelling at me and he left, this couple just stepped forward and the guy was just like, immediately, without skipping a beat, he was just like, let me get a number 3, large with a Coke. And, it was just like, I mean, obviously, it's not their responsibility to comfort me or anything. And it's not like I was actually upset about it. The dude was obviously homeless and mentally deranged. But I don't know. I'm an extremely shy and awkward person. But I do think that if I had witnessed something like that, I would probably say something to the cashier. Like, at least something like, wow, that was crazy. Or like, damn, sorry, bro, that guy was out of line. I think I would say something just to kind of lighten the mood a little. But this guy was just like, let me get a number 3. The whole experience, like not just that specific moment, but the whole experience of working there was just very dehumanizing. The way people treated you was just like, you're not even in the same class of human, like you're a different species or something. And like with the story I just told, it kind of made me feel like the other customers saw me as being on the same level with the crazy homeless guy, who, by the way, I can even understand how he was mad about the fork and about the dressing. I understand that. But the fork thing, it's a simple mistake. I don't know. People are crazy and they're entitled too. I remember another time, this didn't happen to me, but I saw it happen to my coworker. And this girl, the coworker, was actually a fairly attractive teenage girl. And she was very bubbly and very friendly to all the customers. She hadn't yet been beaten down by life. I mean, she probably still hasn't been beaten down by life. And this was like, I don't know, 16, 17 years ago. She's probably still somewhat young and attractive. Well, to me, would still be young. To some of y'all listening, she's probably like a 32-year-old post-wall hag. But either way, at this time, at least, she was young, she was attractive, she hadn't been beaten down by life, she had the halo effect in full effect, and everybody was nice to her. People treated her like she was an angel for the most part. You know how it is. But in this particular instance, I guess the customer was mad that she had to wait for a long time. So what happened was the cashier girl took this lady's order and she ordered a milkshake. I think that was all she ordered. And it was pretty busy. So the way things are set up at this place, cashiers are actually the ones that would make the milkshakes. And it wasn't just a machine like some places have. We had to actually scoop out the ice cream by hand and pour in some milk and then hold the cup up under the mixer, add chocolate syrup or strawberry syrup if it was a flavor other than vanilla. So usually we tried to keep a few milkshakes prepped, which just means we would have a few cups ready that already had ice cream in them, because scooping the ice cream was the part that took the most time. But it was a really hot day that day. We were selling milkshakes like crazy, so we ran out of the already prepared cups of ice cream. And then this girl, the cashier, also had to take some other customers' orders before she could even get to making the shake in the first place. And I could have made the shake too. I was working the drive-thru at the time, but I was also busy dealing with customers at the drive-thru window. So she was the one that got to it first. So she finally made this woman her milkshake. And I don't think it was even like an egregiously long wait or anything. It wasn't like 20 minutes. It wasn't anything like that. It wasn't even 10 minutes. I'm pretty sure it was, if I had to guess, maybe like 5 to 7 minutes, which isn't really that long of a time. But I can see how if you're inside the restaurant, physically standing there at the counter, it might seem like that's a lot longer than it is. And I mean, that is a longer than usual wait for someone that just ordered a single milkshake. But still, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, even if it was 10 minutes, that's not like, I guess it's a long time for a milkshake, but it's not like, I don't know. It's not, well, the way this lady reacted was not appropriate for, for the amount of time. We'll say that. And also, it was clearly super busy at the time. So a long wait should have been expected. But this girl made the milkshake and she hands it over to this fat, middle-aged female customer. And the lady was like, I said I wanted strawberry. And the cashier girl was like, sorry, could you repeat that? I couldn't. And the lady just cut her off and she shouted right in her face, strawberry! I want a strawberry shake. This is chocolate. So the cashier was like, oh, I'm sorry. Let me get that fixed for you. She maintained composure very well. She was responding still in a very friendly, bubbly sort of way, even though she just got yelled at right to her face. So she remakes the shake, and then she was walking over to hand it to this lady, and our fat, ugly manager came around the corner without looking and walked right into the cashier. And so she dropped the shake all over the floor. So I saw that happen, and the customer lady just threw her hands up like, you gotta be kidding me. So I went to go get a mop to clean up the mess, and the cashier apologized to the lady, and she went back to start making a new shake. And as I was going back to get the mop, I heard the customer yelling out, this is ridiculous! I don't have all day! So then the manager started apologizing to her, and the cashier was making her strawberry milkshake. Then by the time I was walking back with the mop bucket, I see this nice, friendly, young cashier handing this old hag her strawberry milkshake. And this woman took it, she took the milkshake, immediately turned it upside down and dumped it all over the counter. And then she threw the cup at the cashier, hit her in the face. The cup hit her in the face. I can't remember what she said, but she said something really mean along the lines of, that's what you get, you little bitch. I do remember she called her a little bitch, but I don't remember exactly what the rest of the sentence was. And I remember just being shocked at how crazy the whole situation seemed. Because it wasn't even really the cashier's fault that she even dropped the shake. Yes, it was her fault she made a chocolate shake at first when it was supposed to be strawberry, but big deal. It's really like anybody could make that mistake. And she was being so nice to this lady too. That's the part that's like, I don't know, So the cashier just started crying and everyone was like, including other customers, everybody in the restaurant other than me, I was kind of, well, I didn't really say anything, but yeah, everybody was like, hey, what the hell was that? What are you doing? And the woman just stomped out. She didn't stop to explain herself. She just stomped out. She didn't ask for her money back or obviously we wouldn't have given her money back. I'm pretty sure. I wasn't the one in charge of that, but I don't think the manager would have given her money back, considering what she did. It just... And seriously, the thing is, there's just so many stories like this that I have from that place. That was maybe the craziest one, but man, people are just crazy and rude and just cruel for no reason. And then, of course, we would also have customers that they weren't rude, but they were just constantly trying to game the system so they could get free food somehow. There was this one lady that would come in all the time, and she would order tons of food every single time, and she was just shameless about it. She would bring friends, she would sometimes even eat inside the restaurant. But what she would do, no matter what she ordered, she would bring it back to us, and there would always be some kind of problem, supposedly. Like sometimes she'd say there was a hair on her food, sometimes she'd claim it was cold or it was undercooked, and it was just blatantly obvious what she was doing, because she would bring a burger up to the counter claiming it was undercooked or something, but half the damn burger would be eaten. Literally every time. That was her MO. That was the scam. She would eat half the food and then try to get her money back after she already got full on the food. I remember when she would eat inside, she would bring one half-eaten item back up to the counter and complain about that one. And then a few minutes later, she'd bring something else. Then a few minutes after that, she comes up with something else. Like I said, she was just shameless about it. And every single time she did that, we had to deal with giving her the money back for each individual item, like on the spot. So we would have to, there's a whole thing called doing an overring where you have to manually re-enter the order, and then you have to void it in the system and print it out. Basically just so at the end of the day, when you count up all the money, everything in the system looks correct, so the money matches up with what the receipts say. So it was like actually a lot of work. It wasn't as simple as just giving someone their money back. There was like paperwork, computer work involved or whatever. But yeah, like I said, she was just shameless about it. It was very obvious what she was doing, and it was also, like I said, it was just wasting so much time. And it always worked because we had a very generous return policy at this place. And none of the managers cared because for the most part, they weren't the ones making the food. And they weren't the ones that had to do the overring and go through that whole process of fixing things with the receipt and getting the person their money back. All the managers had to do was put their signature on the receipt. I had to do all the work and whoever was working in the kitchen. So it was making me do additional work whenever somebody like this lady kept taking advantage of the generous return policy. But the managers seemed like they didn't really care. And this lady, she would come through like every week. I probably dealt with her a dozen times before I was finally like, okay, that's enough. I can't allow this to keep happening. So I remember she came through the drive-thru this final time, and I was working with the hideously ugly fat female manager who, of course, was also the laziest. So she just didn't even come out of the office during this. Otherwise, she would have accepted the return, and I would have had to do all the work of actually doing the overring and everything else. So this lady comes through the drive-thru, she ordered her food, and we made it. And we made sure to make everything just picture perfect. Like, I dropped some fresh fries in the grease. The guy working in the back made all the sandwiches perfect so they looked just like the pictures on the menu. Because we knew who it was. We saw the lady's car when she pulled in. Like, everybody knew what she drove. We knew who we were dealing with. And it was actually the guy working in the back that first suggested, like, bro, please do not give her money back this time. And I was just like, for sure, fuck that. Let's do this, okay? So we made everything picture perfect. I handed her the food. She drove off. Then about 5 minutes later, as I already knew she would, she comes back around the drive-thru and she tells me her burger was cold in the middle. And she's like, holding up this half-eaten burger so I can see the cross-section. And I was just like, no, it's not. And she just looked appalled. Like, she was so shocked. And, she was like, my burger's cold. And I just said, again, no, it's not. I watched him make it. There is no possible way that burger is cold. And I swear, she looked like she was about to cry.
I don't know if this was the first time in her life that she's ever been called on her bullshit. I mean, she had been getting away with this scam at this very restaurant dozens of times before this. So yeah, you know, she was shocked to be called out. And I remember she just sat there for a few seconds. I could tell she was really thinking about what she should do. And then she was just like, okay, thank you. And she drove off. And that was the last time I ever saw her. I don't know if she ever went back sometime when I was off, but I never saw her again, thankfully. She probably ate hundreds or even more than $1,000 worth of free food throughout the course of, because I don't know how long she had been doing this scam before I even started working there. Because it was fairly early on in my career at this place when all this was happening. But yeah, you know, it's just crazy the way that people feel entitled to take advantage like that. You know, and I don't care about the corporation. I don't care about people stealing from this fast food megacorp. The problem is that there's me and all these other minimum wage slaves just toiling away, and they're making us do more work that they, you know, by cheating the system. And it's messed up that they're doing that. So I don't know. This is just the people you encounter when you're working at the slop factory. Like, it's just crazy. It's crazy. And we did have some other people throughout the time I worked there that would do pretty much the same thing. You know, they would eat a significant portion of their food and then try to return it. Or they would just come back the next day with their receipt and they'd have some story to tell about how their order was wrong or there was some items missing or something. So in those cases, they wouldn't even be bringing any food back at all. You know, so I would just assume they ate all of it. And I'm not talking about people that did that just one time. If somebody came in with a receipt and they said, we got their order wrong the other day and they got all the way back home before they noticed, blah, blah, blah. If they weren't a repeat offender, then I just assume they're telling the truth. Because they probably were. You know, I know I've gotten plenty of fast food orders throughout my life that were wrong, you know, missing an item, or just they gave me the wrong food entirely. Obviously, that happens. So usually it was no big deal. The people were probably being honest. So that's fine. I have no issues with doing a return and doing the overring and everything for somebody that actually had something wrong with their order. That's the way it's supposed to work. But when someone comes through with the same complaint for the fourth or the fifth time in a 3-week period, it's pretty obvious what they're doing. You know, it's obvious they're full of shit. They're taking advantage of the system, and they're just making all of us minimum wage cucks do extra work that we shouldn't have to be doing just so they can get a free slop burger. So I do have a big problem with that. And like I say, I wouldn't even really care that much if these people were just sneaking into our kitchen somehow and physically stealing the food. I wouldn't even care if they were able to do that. I don't care about the slop factory's quarterly revenue or whatever. I care about me and my coworkers having to do extra work just to feed some antisocial narcissist. Because it is a very antisocial thing to do, and narcissistic, because you got to think, in order to do a scam like that and try to get free food when there was nothing wrong with your food in the first place, you have to be entirely just dismissive of the person and the people involved in actually making your food, taking your order, and, you know, returning the money, because there is paperwork involved in that, which I think a lot of people probably don't realize. Should be kind of obvious, but yeah, it's antisocial and it's narcissistic. But that's how people are. Especially when you are a minimum wage worker at a fast food restaurant. You know, even someone that's not usually an inconsiderate asshole, when they're dealing with you and you're the minimum wage cuck, they don't give a damn about you. They don't even see you as being in the same caste as them. You know, they see you as less than them. So It's brutal. You know, I'm so glad I don't work there anymore. And I will never work at a fast food. I don't care if I'm homeless, starving, freezing in the streets. I'm not working at the slop factory ever again. But yeah, that one lady was definitely the worst offender. And we did eventually get one manager that pretty much put a stop to all of the repeat offenders. It was this older guy from Greece, and he was really a character in more ways than one. I actually didn't like him at first because he was kind of annoying. Well, no, he was very annoying. Like, he would always be cracking jokes that didn't even make sense. And he always tried to get whoever was working the cash register to say things in Greek to the customers. And this was a rural truck stop town in the deep south, by the way. These people did not want to hear people speaking some foreign language to them. You know, this is God's country. Get that fruity European shit out of here. But yeah, my man Nick from Greece he just operated by his own set of rules. On the one hand, he would always try to give kids free ice cream, which was definitely not any kind of corporate policy. He was just stealing from the company, essentially, with that. Which, I don't care. You know, please do give the kids free ice cream. It's a nice thing to do. But it's just funny that he would do that. But then he would be super strict about other things, like tucking your shirt in, for example. But the reason I came to like Nick so much is because he was a fucking brick wall when it came to people trying to cheat the system. He would outright refuse any returns if they had even taken one bite of their food. He would never just go by the honor system. If somebody came in and said, "Hey, I was here the other day and I ordered 3 burgers, but I only got 2, he would immediately just shut that shit down. Like, he would cut people off mid-sentence and be like, "Show me the receipt," like a freaking robot. Then he'd make okay, so I actually wasn't trying to do a robotic voice. I was attempting to do the Greek accent. It sounded more like a robot, you know. What can you say? I got to be honest about these things. But yeah, he would just make a big spectacle out of looking at their receipt, like he's reading every single word on it, and then he'd just hand it back and be like, "You must return within 24 hours. It's been too long." You know? And I mean, honestly, he was probably too strict about it, but I did like that he would shut down the repeat offenders. But yeah, it's just funny because, like I said, he would also give away free ice cream all the time. And he would also give free burger buns to any dogs that came through the drive-thru. And I remember, that reminds me, there was only one time that I saw Nick get really mad, because he was usually a very jovial guy, just always laughing, always joking around with everybody. But this one time when I was working with Nick and this metalhead stoner guy that was probably about my age at the time, like early to mid-20s. I don't remember if I mentioned, but Nick was an older guy. He was probably in his 50s. And yeah, Nick asked this guy for a burger bun to give to a dog. And then a little bit after that, this guy went up to Nick and he was like, "Hey, Nick, why do you like dogs so much? Don't people eat dogs where you come from?" And Nick was just like, "What did you say? What did you say?" And the guy repeated himself, "Don't people eat dogs where you come from?" And Nick he got real serious and he was like, "If you ever insult Greece again, I will kick your ass." And he was like pointing his finger right in this guy's face. So the stoner guy was like, whoa, I'm just joking, man. I'm just joking. It's just a joke." And Nick was like, "Do not test me." And then after that, Nick came up to me in private and he was like, "If he tries something, you have my back?" And I was like, I don't think he's going to do anything, Nick." And Nick was like, "I need to know you got my back in case anything happens." So, like, he was taking it so serious. And the other guy really was, you know, maybe you could say that's a messed up joke. It is what it is, but he was just joking. But Nick was taking it 100% serious. So, I was just like, all right, I got your back. And obviously, nothing happened. That was the end of that. But yeah, Nick was pretty cool. I have no idea how he even ended up in this part of the country. There's really not a lot of Europeans around here. And the ones that are, like, there's a couple of Euro restaurants that, I don't like saying it like that, okay? I'm gonna be real with you. There's a couple of gyro restaurants in the area that I think do have Greek people working there, but I don't know what Nick's deal was because he was just working at the American Burger Slop Factory. He did say that he was a chef back in Greece, but he also, he just joked around so much that I don't know if he was being serious when he said that. But yeah, one final story for this one. There was this maybe 40-something-year-old construction worker guy that started working there. He said he just wanted to make some extra money during the slow season, and he was very friendly. He was like a big dumb oaf, basically. I'm not trying to insult him with that. That is just a basic description of how he was. And I remember he was, just talking to me, making conversation the first time we worked together. And I told him I was in college. So he was asking me what classes I'm taking. So I told him I'm in a math class, among other things. And this was one of the stupidest things I've ever heard anybody say. So I told him I'm in a math class, right? He told me that he used to really struggle with math until somebody explained it to him in a certain way. So then he pulled out a measuring tape, which apparently he just always has on him at all times. Like he's a construction worker NPC, and the measuring tape is just a part of his loot. So he pulled out the measuring tape, and he pulls it out a few inches, and he's like, see, math is actually really simple. It's just a measuring tape. See? And he pointed at the tape and he was like, see, that's math. That's all it is. And he was saying this like it's just the most profound thing ever. And I was just sitting there waiting for him to finish, but that was it. Like that was the whole, like that was the explanation. Math is a measuring tape. That's what he said. Math is stupid, very stupid. So I think I said something like, yeah, I mean, I guess a measuring tape is a number line. And he was like, no, math is a measuring tape. That's all it is. See, if you have 4 inches, and he pulled out 4 inches, but then you take away 1 inch, and he pushed it back an inch, then now you have 3 inches. See? Math is a measuring tape. I swear to God, this really happened. I was just standing there like dumbfounded because I don't think this guy was actually like intellectually disabled, but what he was saying seemed to be a very intellectually disabled thing to say. But I don't know. Maybe that's just regular stupid, I guess. But he was trying to be nice, obviously. He thought he was helping me, probably, or that he was saying something interesting. I don't know. I don't want to insult him too much for that. And I'm pretty sure I was taking calculus at the time, by the way. And I did tell him that. I didn't just tell him I'm taking math. I told him I was in a calculus class. So I don't know what the hell he thinks calculus is, but obviously I was a little bit past the point of 4 minus 1 equals 3. Because I figured that one out in kindergarten, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, either way, the guy was a friendly guy at first, I thought. But then, the first time he was working, when it got a little bit busy, he just hulked the fuck out and quit. So it was probably like his second week working there. We were usually not that busy in the evenings. This place was really more of a breakfast restaurant. They're open at nights and they have a lunch and dinner menu, but it's just more popular for breakfast. But we would occasionally get a rush around dinner time, 6 to 8 p.m. It might get a little bit busy sometimes. So that happened when it was just me, this construction guy, and the gross, disgusting, super fat female manager. So it got really busy, and me and the construction guy were in the back making the food, and the manager was the one that was taking orders. And she would occasionally tell us things, just like normal things through the course of the job, But the guy was getting really frustrated anytime she told him to do something. I could tell, I could just see on his face how frustrated he was getting. For example, after she took this one order, she told the guy to not put pickles on the burger because she didn't ring it up with no pickles when she took the order, probably because the customer didn't tell her that they didn't want pickles until after they had already paid, which is something that happened all the time. But, she had to tell the guy to not put pickles on it because since she didn't ring it up that way, it wasn't going to show up on the screen that we would see in the back. Okay, so she tells him, don't put pickles on that one. And she didn't say it in a demanding tone or anything. She did not say it rudely. I witnessed this personally, okay? She just said it in a regular way, like because she has to relay this information to the guy in order for the burger to be made correctly. She was just like, hey, don't put pickles on that one, okay? And the guy just looked so mad. And then he said something to me like, I don't know what her deal is, but I don't let people talk to me like that. And I just didn't say anything. I didn't know what he was talking about because she didn't even talk to him any kind of way. But yeah, so we finished up with that order and we had a little bit of a rest before any more customers came through. And the guy comes up to me and he was like, if she keeps talking to me like that, I'm going to tell her off. I've had just about enough. And I think I just looked at him like, I didn't know what to say, so I didn't even say anything. I just looked at him and I maybe like just nodded or what, because it was confused. I was confused. I didn't know what he was talking about. This manager, she was an F-tier manager. She was very lazy, but she was actually doing her job at that time. And she really wasn't being rude to the guy at all. So it was baffling to me the way he was reacting. Well, so we had a little bit of a break, right? And then we had another little rush. We had a few cars come through at the same time. And a few people came inside as well. And the same thing happened again where the manager just told this guy to do something. Again, not in any kind of rude or demanding way. Her tone of voice was perfectly reasonable, She wasn't overly friendly, but she wasn't rude about it. She just said something like, I don't remember what it was, but it was something sort of like, can you put those in 2 separate bags? Or can you put extra mayonnaise on that one? Just some basic instruction that she needed to tell the guy based on what a customer had asked for, which is just a basic part of the job. Well, when she did that, this guy just hulked out. He picked up the burger that he was working on and he just slammed it on the ground and he goes, fuck you, you're a stupid fucking bitch. And he starts walking out and the manager was just like, hey, what's your problem? And he just goes, and I remember because it was actually pretty funny just with how ridiculous it was. I didn't laugh at the time, obviously, because I was like, I was afraid, I was like, this guy, I hope he doesn't like do anything too drastic. But yeah, she's like, hey, what's your problem? And he just goes, fuck you, as he was walking past the counter on his way out. And I know this sounds crazy, but I promise you this really happened, okay? There was some lady that was just standing in line, just a customer just waiting on her turn to order. And as he walked past her, she was just looking at him with her mouth open, just like, because she's witnessing in real time, this big, crazy guy just hulking out. And I mean, that is another element of this too. I don't know if I mentioned this guy was probably like 6'3", at least 250 pounds. So he's walking past the counter and he's like, "Fuck you," to the manager. And this customer is looking at him and he just looks at her and he goes, "Fuck you too, bitch." And she didn't even say anything. It was just an innocent older woman waiting in line to order her food. And of course, this was in the middle of a rush. So now it was literally just me and the manager there. So more work for us, of course. But yeah, that was just crazy to me because up to that point, this guy had been just very friendly. He seemed like a completely normal, outgoing, nice guy. But I guess he just couldn't handle the pressure. We had a little dinner rush, and I guess for him, that was too much to handle. I will say, him and the manager had both been working for like 2 or 3 hours already before I got there. So it is possible that she had said something to him before I got there that pissed him off. That is a possibility, but I don't really think so because, this was one of the wenches that laughed at my man Daryl during the hug incident that I talked about in the last video. So she was capable of cruelty, but she wasn't usually just outright rude to anybody. Even with the thing with Daryl, obviously that was a very cruel joke, but she wasn't really the ringleader in that. She did laugh, which was absolutely not okay. But I'm just saying, I don't think that she actually said anything to set this guy off. I don't think I ever saw her be directly rude to someone in that way, if that makes sense. So I think the guy just hulked out for no reason. I don't know. It was the quickest I've ever seen somebody get really, really mad for no reason at all. And, it's unfathomable to me to even imagine acting like that. But that's how it goes, I guess, sometimes at the slop factory. Everybody's underpaid. The work is miserable and it's very stressful. It's not hard work necessarily, but you are on your feet for hours and hours, and you're dealing with miserable coworkers and miserable customers all day long, and everybody treats you like you aren't even human. It's a powder keg. I'm a naturally pretty laid-back person, so I couldn't imagine just going Super Saiyan like that all of a sudden and just flying off the handle, telling a random customer, like, "Fuck you too, bitch." That's the part that really got me, because it is possible that the manager had said something that I didn't even hear before I got there, but the other lady was completely innocent. She hadn't even ordered yet. She was just waiting in line. She was completely uninvolved in the situation. She was an innocent bystander, and she just got drive-by insulted by this guy. I don't know, man. It's just crazy. Again, I am so glad I am not in that environment anymore, because I think with all these individual stories I've told throughout this video about all these different people that just raged out, they just hulked out in very low stakes situations. They expressed anger that it was as if their life had been threatened. These people got so angry, but it's like, I think if you take any of these people and you put them in a regular environment that isn't the slop factory, I think none of this happens. These people don't get angry like that, right? It's just that environment. It's just miserable. As soon as you walk in the doors and you just see like the super bright white fluorescent lighting, you just smell the slop. You're there to eat the slop, and the smell's not necessarily bad, right? But you smell it, I'll never forget that smell either. I will never forget it. And again, it's like, I like the food at this place. I like the food. But there's something about the smell that it's just like just through your olfactory nerves, the grease is getting into your veins, and it's making you angry. You know, even I guess, personally, I'm just not the type of guy that internalizes stress in an anger response. I don't really get mad as much as I just get like really anxious and stressed out. But a lot of people aren't like me. A lot of people do, they get that grease in their veins, they get that smell through their olfactory nerves, belly full of slop, or they're just in there seeing all the ugly, fat retards, and then they look down and all they see is their belly, can't even see their toes, and they're like, oh shit, I'm a fat retard too. And then they get some people, when that happens to them, their body just converts all that energy into anger, and they just get really, really mad. So that's the thing about the slop factory. It's just a bad environment. Whether you get angry or you get anxious or you get depressed, like everybody that steps foot in there they're going to feel some type of way. Okay. Now, in the next installment of this series, I'm going to be talking about what it's like working in the slop factory as a sub-5 when a lot of my coworkers were actually attractive young ladies, like fresh out of high school, full of life, just exuding that positive magnetic energy. And there was one girl that, at that time in my life, I was like just starting to transition into being a sub-5 because I used to be okay looking. Point being, I think maybe there was something between me and this girl. But yeah, that's in the next video, so stay tuned for that. And please, if you like this one, feel free to watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for listening.